Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for a very special webinar featuring Mojo Enforce, our integration with Google for Education. Before we get started, I would like to remind everybody that you're all on mute today. So if at any time you do have a question for Robin, our presenter, please submit that question through the Q&A function on the GoToWebinar panel or the chat window. All questions will be held until the end of this presentation. And at that point, I will read them in the order received. I would now like to introduce today's presenter, Robin Jellum, Director of Technical Marketing at Mojo Networks. Robin is an expert in wireless networking, having been in the industry for 30 years with roles spanning from engineering to support and marketing. Today, Robin will be talking about how Mojo Enforce is simplifying authentication, as our unique technology allows only registered devices to connect to your network. Using our integration with Google Apps for Education, Mojo Enforce references the registered device list on Google Cloud to validate authentication sessions and go above and beyond PSK or 802.1x. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce Robin.
Great. First, a little bit about Mojo Networks. Mojo is revolutionizing the way Wi-Fi works. Mojo is one of the innovators in doing wireless in the cloud. We do everything in the cloud. We use the power of the cloud to do so many things, not just management of the APs, but doing analytics, doing some really unique things like Mojo Aware, Mojo Enforce. These are real powerful tools that leverage the power of the cloud to really add features and cognitive Wi-Fi, the intelligence to the Wi-Fi network. Mojo is built on an open hardware platform. Our vision is that you should be able to use anybody's AP with the cloud. Now, we're not there today, but that's where we're pushing. The open platform is part of our religion. We believe wholeheartedly in it. We don't believe that any AP vendor should be able to handcuff their customers to their solution. And Mojo is leading in the vanguard of creating this revolution. One of the real key elements of what we're doing, powered by the cloud and powered by these very powerful and smart APs, is we're defining cognitive Wi-Fi. And one of the aspects of cognitive Wi-Fi is Mojo Aware. With Mojo Aware, we're starting to see some of the fruitions of the cognitive plane that we've developed. With this, we can do root cause analysis of connection failures on the AP. So when a client fails on the AP knows what the failure is and feeds that information back to the Mojo management system in the cloud, and within seconds you can see that a user has failed and know what the root cause of that problem was. Before, you had to have a sniffer trace, you had to get logs, you had to do all these things. With cognitive Wi-Fi and Mojo Aware, the AP does all that for you. We have the intelligence. Now the APs, we built that intelligence in the AP, so the AP can do this root cause analysis and provide the information back. Another really cool thing we're doing right now is something called auto packet capture. As clients connect to the AP, the packets are being captured all the time. And when a connection failure happens, those packets are captured and sent to the cloud, so you can actually download them and see what's going on if you need to. With the root cause analysis, most of the times you don't need to, because it's already, the root cause analysis tells you what the root cause was. But if you wanted to take a deeper look, you could look at the auto packet capture packets and see exactly what's going on. This saves you time from having to travel on site, try to reproduce a problem, which takes hours and hours of time. I used to go do that for a living. I used to be a smoke jumper and go on site, and I'd walk for days trying to reproduce problems and I wish I had Mojo Aware then, because it would have saved me flying anywhere. And the last thing is we're trying to simplify the way people look at how their network is designed. A lot of network management systems show you lots of graphs about things that are going on and give you pretty pictures. Well, Mojo Aware does that, but we do something more. We look at the network and we say, well, what's normal for your network? Not what's some artificial threshold and did you go above it, below it, where you get a lot of false positives and false negatives. With baselines, we can predict what's normal for your network, and then we can point out what the anomalies are in that. So you can focus on the real problems rather than just these false positives and false negatives. And another one of the really cool things is with APs with the third radio, we have something called the client connectivity test. the third radio on the AP can actually act as a client. So when a problem occurs, you can go in and have that third radio connect to the AP that's having a problem, and see if it can connect. And it runs a whole host of tests, from full connectivity to testing the latency of things onto the internet. And one more message from our sponsor. I want to talk about the C100. It's our newest AP. The C100 is perfect for education deployments. It is a value-priced but very high-performance 11AC AP Wave 2. It's perfect for medium density, and it supports all the advanced features that Mojo Aware and Mojo Enforce bring to you. It supports cognitive Wi-Fi with Mojo Aware, the application visibility, role-based firewall, integrated whips, all the normal stuff that is part of our offering. I went on to Google's website and looked at what their network recommendations were, just to give an idea of what the recommendations for education is. And for classrooms, they're saying you should have an AP that supports 30 devices max. So that's a medium density, not super high density. And in classrooms, video has become increasingly important, so you need to have a minimum bandwidth per user. So if you're running standard definition video, that's about 1 megabits per second for 30 clients concurrently. And if you're running HD video, that's over 4 megabits, roughly 4 to 8 to 12, depending on the content, HD video. So you need that per user for each session. And so with the C100, we've done some benchmarking. We're just about to release it. We did a competitive analysis and ran all of our major competitors against the C100. So stay tuned for that. We'll release that probably within the next couple of weeks, and we'll be blogging around us. We'll watch the blog and download the report. All right. So as you all know, things are changing in the school systems. Learning is changing. There's a paradigm shift of what's going on. It's geared more towards sharing between students and collaboration between students. And Mojo, and Google for Education has really taken that and made it its own. So one of the things that's going on is with E-rate dollars, the internet and Wi-Fi has been funded better than it ever has been before. So now schools and universities and students are using tablets and Chromebooks a lot more in the classroom and outside the classroom. Because of that and the investment in Wi-Fi and the internet, we now have a digital learning experience where real collaboration can happen. And G Suite for Education, or Google Apps, is the perfect collaboration tool. It is designed, it's hosted in the cloud, and it is designed for collaboration, and it is designed to share documents and be able to communicate more clearly and work together on projects. I just pulled these statistics this morning. So in 2016 and 17 school year, 3 out of 5 teachers say they'll be using more technology in the classroom. 80% believe that it's but their technology is already good to great. 75% of the teachers use it daily, and 50% plus of the schools surveyed have a one-to-one model already, and that's up 10% from last year. So this is really catching on and growing. With the prices going down in both the Google world and the Apple world, and E-rate dollars being available, it's really been a phenomenal transition and continues to be so. So a little bit about Google for Education, probably telling you things you already know, but one of the advantages of, well, it's free for education. As long as you're a qualified school, and it's a pretty broad definition, you can get Google for Education for free. It's very effective at collaboration. It's not just used in schools, it's used in business. We here at Mojo Networks run our business on the Google App Suite. It helps us communicate better, it helps us collaborate, it does us all very seamlessly. But that really means that you have to have a good network infrastructure. So you have to have good internet access, and you have to have a solid Wi-Fi. And if you don't have solid Wi-Fi, you're going to have a problem. One of the other things that's unique to Google for Education is they have a an application in Google Suite just for education called Google Classroom, which helps teachers organize their classroom and organize their lessons and communicate much more effectively and responsibly to their students. So there's a whole range of apps that go into this. I'm not going to read them all, but there's a significant suite of Google applications that makes the product a whole product offering for anybody who wants to use it in education or in business. So G Suite or Google Apps is increasing. That it's been a real boon for the industry, and the adoption rate they expect to go up to over 100 million by 2020. So I think last year was 50 million. I think this year is over 50 million. I haven't seen the final statistics yet, but it grew more than it was expected this year. So it's really a powerful tool and being adopted because of the usefulness. That's not to say that it's trivial. So switching to Google for education, Google Apps takes a little bit of work, and Google has a lot of documentation to help that. There's lots of people in the industry to help do that. Once you have it done, though, you've got a very well organized infrastructure. So it makes you define your organization, your users, and your device management. You can do all of the management through Google for Education. It defines your organizational structure and your user directory, which is useful for many different things. And with Google Device Management, all of the authorized devices are registered on the network, and that's where where Mojo Enforce comes in. With the registered devices, we can help make sure that the right devices, the authorized devices, stay on the network and other people don't get on the network. So once you have Google integrated into your system, adding Mojo Enforce is simple and easy. If you have Mojo Networks access points already, the integration is very simple and it's free. So you get Google Apps for free, you get Mojo Enforce for free, and you get a much more secure network. One of the challenges that exists with both Google and with Wi-Fi is some security controls. Sorry, I'm speaking over myself. Google does a great job at defining user roles and application availability on devices and managing devices. They have some capabilities of defining networks, which networks can be used and which interfaces on the Chromebooks can be used on a device basis, and some user rules on Chromebook and mobile device basis. But they don't really have any control over the network itself. And Wi-Fi has built-in security, which really defines who can access the network. And there are two essential ways, authentication methods that Wi-Fi typically uses. One is using pre-shared key or PSK, and the other one is using 802.1x, which is a port-based authentication method using a radius server or a AAA server. So pre-shared key is really easy to administrate. You define a key, and then you give that key to everyone. Well, the challenge with that is it's the same key for everyone, and because it's the same key, that's easily shared. And so users, if they have the key on their authorized device, they can also put it on their unauthorized device, or they can give it to somebody who can connect to the school network. There's no way to prevent somebody from getting on the network once they have that key, based with pre-shared key. So you can't restrict devices based on pre-shared key. 802.1x is more secure, but there's more overhead with it. Each user has individual credentials. They have a username and password. And then you can actually give permissions based on those credentials. Based on the radius server, they can provide some attributes to those users to give them credentials. The problem with that is it's pretty complex to set up. You have to have a radius server. You may have to have a directory server like LDAP or Active Directory. They need to be able to communicate with each other. Those need to be set up on the wireless network. So when you connect to wireless, it connects to those systems so the user can get authorized. And it also can't really restrict devices. Now, there are some ways to do restriction, but they're not really palatable and don't often get used in the industry. And even with that, the credentials still can be shared. It's still a username and password based system. So I could give my username and password to anybody else, and they can add their device to the network. So as you can see, there's a security hole here. The security weakness really is the user, as it always is. So if we just didn't let a user use our network, then we'd have a totally secure network. That's just not practical. So with Wi-Fi, you can limit the authentication, but it's user-based and the credentials are shareable. So this is the weakness. And with Google, there's little influence over the wireless network. So this is where Mojo Enforce comes in. Well, sorry, before I get there. With shareable credentials, that means anybody could get on the network with an unauthorized device. They could bring their own phone in, their own tablet in, they could give it to somebody else. So they could use their own personal devices. They could even create their own personal hotspot so other people could connect to the network. And with unauthorized users, anybody who gets credentials could get on your network, which could cause some challenges and some security problems and some privacy issues. So some of the unauthorized device challenges are really that it consumes bandwidth. There's no limit. There's no way to control these users from what they're doing. So you can't really prevent them from doing what you need to. Now there are controls you can do that. We'll see that on the wireless side, but pure Wi-Fi security with 802.1x or PSK, there's no way to limit those activities. And when you see these people on your network, it's an IT distraction. You know, if IT is doing their job and is concerned about security, they want to make sure they don't have these unauthorized devices on the network. So that takes some time to track down and to eliminate people from getting on the network. And then depending on what those people are doing, these unauthorized devices, they could consume a lot of bandwidth. And bandwidth is still pretty a precious resource in Wi-Fi. There's only so much bandwidth. Now with 11 AC, there's a lot more bandwidth, but it's still an overall distraction and concern for schools. So just a quick summary. With Google, you can restrict Wi-Fi access by user accounts somewhat with 802.1x, and you can't really restrict things by enrolled devices, and you can't really restrict things by OU membership to get on the network. So this is the challenge we're here to talk about today. And what the answer is Mojo Enforce. So with Mojo Enforce, you can actually, with the Mojo Google integration, you can put another layer of security on top of PSK and 802.1x. So you're still using the 802.1x and PSK authentications of 802.11, but you're adding another layer of security on top of it. It's pretty easy to set up. There's some steps. There's quite a few steps on the Google side. There's very few steps on the Mojo side. There's a handful. We have a guide that we've put together that will walk you through all those steps. So as long as you have Google set up, getting it connected to Mojo is actually pretty straightforward, step-by-step process. It's free, and there's nothing you need to do with clients. Since you have Google already set up, you have all the clients registered, everything you need to do on the Google side from the client perspective is done. And with Mojo Enforce, you can actually have more control, because not only can you make sure people are on or off the network, but you can give them access rights based on the organizational unit in Google. So the way it works is fundamentally there's an API connection between the Mojo Wireless Manager and the Google Cloud. And once you have everything set up in Google and get all your devices registered, the registered device list is shared with Mojo Wireless Manager. And that device list gets pushed to each and every AP. So when the user comes on the network and connects to the network and logs in, the AP authenticates the user and then checks to see if that device's MAC address is in its approved list. If it's in its approved list, then it assigns the roles defined in Mojo Enforce. If it's not on the approved list, it will disconnect the device. So it's kind of just showing a basic, simple view of that. Again, pretty simple, pretty basic from the user standpoint and from conceptual standpoint. The device is on the network, it gets on the network, it gets to the AP. The AP says you are approved or not approved. If you're authorized, it gives you the rights that you are authorized for. If you're not, it can either disconnect you or it can assign a guest role to you and give you restricted access rights. The authorization list gets synced between Google and Mojo Enforce by default on a daily basis, but you can do a manual sync anytime you feel necessary. So that's a lot about Mojo Enforce. The value of it is to add another layer of security. There's not too much more overhead, but those together are still not quite the whole solution. So one of Mojo's values is that we started out as a WIPS company. We really defined WIPS in the cloud. We made WIPS as a software, as a service in the cloud. And what WIPS brings to the table is that you can effectively block much more on the network, and Mojo has a unique perspective on this. We have over 37 patents in this. We have a patented technology called marker packets, which gives us the most accurate way of classifying users and devices on the network. Other systems give a lot of false positives. They're rules-based, so you have to have a rule. Every time there's an exception to that rule, you have to create another rule, and it becomes a mess. With marker packets, it's almost 100%, and it's very easy to use. You don't get a lot of false positives or false negatives. So with WIPS, you can do lots of things that you can't do just by a plain old network. So we've done sometimes WIPS is added to APs, so all Mojo APs have WIPS included in it, and with our 11AC APs, these are very powerful, very intelligent APs. So with WIPS on top of it, we can do a very effective and not affect performance impact of the access side of the house. We did a benchmark with our C130. Our C130, again, is the AP with the third radio, and with the third radio, you can do a much more effective WIPS classification and prevention. With other technologies, they have to do scanning of the channels in background mode. With the C130, it uses the dedicated third radio to scan the channels much more quickly. So if there are problems, you get a much more accurate read and you get prevention much more quickly. So there's a benchmark that came out, I believe, in November about the AP performance with WIPS and how it affects it. And you'll see that the C130 shines compared to the other competitive APs in that class. So really, what is WIPS doing? So with Mojo Airtight, it allows the allowed devices on the network to connect to allowed APs. It blocks the authorized devices, unauthorized devices, and neighbor devices from connecting to rogue APs or connecting to authorized APs. And it also prevents authorized clients from connecting to neighbor APs or to other ad hoc devices. So it's a real complete solution, keeping your devices, your authorized devices on your network, not connecting to other things, and keeping unauthorized people off of your network connecting to the AP. At the same time, one of the real concerns about WIPS is the WIPS often can have unintended consequences by blocking neighbors from connecting to their own APs, which is technically illegal. So with Mojo Airtight, we're very effective at not affecting neighbors and not affecting rogues connecting to neighbors, because that's not our responsibility. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of stuff I talked about there.